All right, everybody. Getting things rounded up here. Okay, looks like we're pulling things in on Facebook now and on YouTube. Okay, looks like we're running correctly on everything, so we're going to go ahead and rock and roll this guy. Okay. So what you should be able to see here is the presentation that we're going to do on transportation services in Arizona. Now, I'm Carlos Grandela. Pull my mask off here so everybody can see me. And we are now at 3 o'clock, so let's do this. This is a topic that I think is a big issue for a lot of people who have low vision. We eventually reach a point with many of our patients that we're no longer able to drive, or that driving becomes difficult or scary, or just something that's concerning us. And so we definitely want to have the opportunity to talk about what are the transportation services that we can use. How can we move forward with keeping independence when travel becomes difficult? So the first thing we should talk about, and I've mentioned this in a lot of other webinars, so I won't dwell on this too much, is the driver's license requirements in Arizona. Now, this is very similar to many other states, but this will vary state by state. So if you're viewing us from California or Utah or a different state, keep in mind you should check with your DMV what the actual restrictions are. Generally, in most states, if you have 20/40 or better vision with a substantial visual field, there are no restrictions at all. A lot of states you need 115 or 120 degrees of vision. In Arizona, you only need 105. To be a daytime only driver, 20/50 and 20/60 vision is what's generally accepted in most states. And by the time you hit 20/70 vision, that's where states will either allow you to use bioptics or may tell you to retire from driving. So Arizona is one of about 45 states that allow bioptic driving. And in our state, if you're between 20/70 to 2200 vision in the better eye and have a full field of vision, if you can look through a bioptic and achieve 20/40 vision, then that is something that can make you eligible to drive with that bioptic. Now that again will vary state by state. In Illinois, where I was before, for example, if you were above 2100, I believe it was, you were ineligible to drive. Even if you could do that through a bioptic, if you weren't meeting 2100, you didn't meet the requirements. So that will again vary depending on where you're at. How can we go about obtaining a bioptic license? Well, day one, get into the doctor's office and we make sure you hit those eligibility requirements. If you're doing better than a bioptic, great. But if you fall here in Arizona within 20/70 to 2200, we want to make sure that you can adequately use a bioptic, look through it, get that 20/40 acuity, and those are our minimum requirements. So if we find through the assessment, we think that this can work, you decide to go ahead and purchase the device. On day 15, it takes about 2 weeks for the device to come in. Not always, but let's say day 15, you get the device, we make sure that it's fitting well on you. I'll actually take about 30 to 40 minutes to sit down and do training with you. There's 6 basic things I want you to know before we send you out to the real world to practice with this device. And now when I say practice, I don't mean getting behind the wheel and driving. You're not legal to do that until you're fully licensed with it. But I'll talk here a little bit more about that. The training that I'm going to do to start with is going to be 1 on localization, 2 on focusing, 3 spotting, 4 tracing, 5 tracking, and 6 scanning. These are our 6 basic techniques that we want to work on. A lot of it has to do with head motion, proper use of the device. But once we kind of get you, handled on how to do these different things, we're going to send you home and say, We want you to practice I Spy. We want you to sit as a passenger in the car, use it on your television, watch people across the street. You want to practice with this as much as you can for the next month. And at 1 month, which would be day 45, we review that basic training and make sure that you are functional with this, that you're proficient in these techniques. Assuming that you hit that proficiency and that you haven't found any trouble with the device over that month, we refer you on to Driving to Independence, which is a local behind the wheel group. They're in fact the only one in the state of Arizona that I've found who will do driving evaluations for bioptics and low vision. They're located in Tempe, and they typically don't want to know anything about you until you've finished all your basic training with me and we've given you the go ahead, and we send a report over to them so that they know you're meeting those visual requirements, and they'll give you a behind the wheel assessment. And that's where we're taking the visual side of things with this device and then applying it behind the wheel and saying this is how you're actually using it, actually applying these skills. And some people are good drivers and some aren't. So at that point, I've done everything I can for vision, and if you're a bad driver, that's up to Driving Independence to help you fix. If you can successfully pass their evaluation and any additional training they require of you, pass the road test, that is what has to be done in the first year to be eligible to be a licensed bioptic driver. All those reports get sent to the motor vehicle department. You get a telescopic driver license, and that is valid for a year. Each year they'll send you a letter saying that you need a new medical report stating what your vision is. And that's something that we may require of you anyway if you're a daytime driver, but for bioptics, it's mandatory once a year. So you'll come back just for your regular eye exam. We can fill that report out each time you come back to see us. And this is really a guard against further vision loss. If you have macular degeneration, for example, and you meet the field requirements, but the clarity is the issue, we want to make sure that we can keep that clarity at the legal levels moving forward. If you get outside of those ranges, we may need to upgrade the power of your telescope, but some people lose the ability to drive entirely. And the rest of this presentation is about what do you do afterwards? Where do you go from, I used to be a driver, I used to be a bioptic driver, and how am I going to get to work? How am I going to get to the groceries? How am I going to see my doctors for appointments? Maybe I don't have family to rely on to take me from location to location, or friends, or other things like that. So this will change city by city. So I'm going to talk about Phoenix Metro as well as Tucson, northern and southern Arizona. There's several different groups that are working on this, government and nonprofit agencies. So there's a lot for us to go through. Before I dive into public transit, though, I want to talk about self-driving cars because this is a new thing. When I was a student, this wasn't something we could talk about as an option for people with low vision, and it's not even a countrywide thing yet. In 2018, Governor Ducey signed an executive order that basically allowed autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles, to be legal on the road as long as they were following all the federal laws, regulations, and guidelines, as well as the state guidelines and laws that have been set forth. And so that is with a person in the car or without a person in the car. So you may have noticed that there are lots of companies pushing for this these days. We have Tesla, that's the big name. Those are the cars you go out today and go buy one if you have $40,000 on hand at minimum. But there's several other companies that are working on this. Argo AI, Cruise, Zoox or Zoox, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But you may know, here's a headline pulled from Cronkite News, Arizona PBS, is that Waymo is a rideshare service, now has autonomous cars in the Chandler area. I don't know if it's in all of the greater Phoenix metro, but I know it's in Chandler, and I think into parts of Gilbert and Mesa. So this is a pretty new thing. I think came just this last fall of 2020. You can have a driverless taxi take you wherever you want to go. So it's something you would order just like an Uber or a Lyft. Waymo is just a separate company. And this is thought by many people to be the way of the future. Um, if you don't have the money to go and buy a Tesla on your own, you can definitely get a riderless car to come and pick you up and take you to the places that you need. Those costs will vary, of course, by how much mileage it is and things like that, just like it would for an Uber or a Lyft. But self-driving cars is something to definitely keep your ears open for if you are a person who has vision impairment or blindness, or you have a loved one or a friend who has those things. As these cars become more and more available, this is really going to decrease the impact of losing your driver's license. The Zoox car down in the bottom left corner, for example, if you go look at their website, ZOOX is the name of the company. You go look at their website, this car has no steering wheel in it. Now, I think it's just in the prototype stages at this point, but that's what they're looking to move us towards, is cars that it's kind of like a carriage ride with no driver. The robot's going to do all the thinking for you. So definitely something to pay attention to as news opens up in the future. So let's move into Valley Metro. Valley Metro is the service in the Greater Phoenix Metro that does our public transit system. If you go to valleymetro.org, you're going to find lots and lots of information about bus routes, train routes, light rail, trolley, paratransit, all kinds of different options you can use, shuttles to the airport, things like that. The picture that I've put on the screen, you're going to notice I've done a lot of screen grabs for this presentation. I've tried to pull everything directly from their site, so it looks very similar to how you're going to see it when you show up there. This is an example of the scheduling that they have open. You can get on and look at schedules for any route, whether it's trains or buses or other lines. So we have a rail system, rapid buses, neighborhood buses, rural routes, and things like that. You can click on any of those. They'll give you alerts for repairs that are going on, might slow down a line or things like that, as well as the expected times that you should be hitting any of these public transit systems. For many people, that may be enough. Just getting that information, getting locked into their RideKick app, just having the availability of public transit may be enough for you. For many of our patients, it is not. So you can get on, you can look at these bus routes, train routes, things like that. This was one particular route I had selected for the picture. It'll show you every stop along the way. You can also look at a map of the Greater Phoenix area and all of the different lines that run through it. You can select different lines and delve deeper into those particular ones. You can use a travel plotter to help you decide, how can you get from one location to the other. I did notice that as I experimented with it, using public transit lines to cross the Phoenix Metro, seemed to be a pretty difficult thing. If you were in particular areas that didn't have a route coming by and the website deems it too far for you to walk from that stop to your final destination or vice versa, it may tell you that there is no pathway. You may have to finagle with it a little bit, maybe give it a different location of something nearby, Burger King or something that's a little bit closer to the actual stop. May change what the routing tells you. But you have lots and lots of different options for how to get back and forth. I was looking across the metro because you may know we have offices both in Mesa and Sun City. So I wanted to see, well, if I had a patient in Mesa, could they cross to my Sun City office? And it looked like it was pretty tough to get there. I was working on it for quite a while. And to just use public transit options, I think would be tough. They will give you your fare prices. So typical fares can be, $2. Can buy those on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis. Lots of different options for how you could purchase your tickets and fares for getting onto these systems. There's also for our patients with vision impairment and blindness, and which is considered a disability, the ability to get reduced fares and sometimes free rides off of these services. So the way to go about that, and here is their warning that please be prepared to show your ID, which will be a Metro Valley ID to state that you have an impairment, you have a reduced fare. This is an option. You can go to the Valley Metro for an interview, show them paperwork showing that you have a visual impairment or other impairment, and get a reduced fare card. So you may not pay quite as much as other people do. So how do you go about this? Anybody who wants to apply for a reduced fare card, if it's for disability, you mail in an application to Valley Metro with supporting documentation. That's a application you can get right off their website. You will need a doctor to fill it out with you. Doctor's signature needs to be on there, talking about your disability, level of vision loss. You'll be sent an eligibility letter, and that's presented at the photo ID site to obtain a photo ID card, which costs you $5 to get that card. That's what people will be asking you for when you go to purchase something at a reduced fare. So you have to mail your application in with supporting documents like a certificate of legal blindness. Of course, your application again has to be signed by a valid medical official who can state that you do have that impairment. And then if you're approved, you'll get an eligibility letter, which you can then take to do a photo ID. So that licensed professional has to give a signed slip or medical record form talking about that diagnosis, or a letter with their letterhead matching the diagnosis on the application, and it must be within 30 days. So here, as it says, legal blindness is considered a visual impairment that is in both eyes, not correctable with lenses. So people say, oh, I'm legally blind if I take my glasses off. That's not really a thing. If you put your glasses on, you're not legally blind, which means you as an individual are not legally blind. But if the visual acuity in the better of the two eyes is 2200 or less, then you are considered legally blind. Now that's the well-known standard. Actually, the true standard these days is if your vision is worse than 2100. So if you land at 2150, for example, the old standard would say not legally blind. The new standard would say legally blind. That was changed in 2007, but you'll find many agencies, organizations, even doctors don't know that there was a change. The second way that you could qualify for legal blindness would be to have a visual field of a diameter 20 degrees or less. So if we repeat what was on the visual field testing, for example, to drive you needed 105 degrees of vision. Most people in one eye have at least 120, just depending on your brow size, how deep set your eyes may be, how big your nose is, things like that. But to have 20 degrees of vision or less would require a condition like stroke, perhaps, or ocular strokes, glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa, rod and cone dystrophies, things like that. So it wouldn't be expected, but there are people who have 20/20 vision in a very small field of vision. They also can qualify for legal blindness. If that field is 20 degrees or less. You may also qualify for disability if you're perhaps not legally blind, but require the use of a white cane or a walking dog, for example. Or even if you're just using a cane or a walker, you may qualify by mobility. But for those patients who find that vision is reducing their mobility and they use a white cane, but perhaps they have a visual field of 30 degrees and technically don't qualify for legal blindness, you could still qualify for disability in regards to the Valley Metro. So again, we need a provider signing on to that, providing some documentation. Here at Viewfinder, we are more than happy to fill out any of those forms, and I think most doctors in general are happy to assist you in that regard. Again, we want to mention the RideKick app from Valley Metro. This is what they use to give you updates on your route, to help you plan your route just through a smart device. So it can be a really useful tool. Of course, you can do all of this online as well. So what if you're not able to just use regular public transit? What if getting to the bus stop or getting to the train station is a big issue? Well, we have paratransit services. So in Phoenix metro area, that is largely taken up by Dial-A-Ride. Dial-A-Ride is a shuttle service that will be kind of door-to-door service for you. You may find that you are on the ride with, a handful of other people, depending on how routes line up and things like that. You may find that pickup times are a little extended, saying they'll come pick you up anywhere between 11:30 and 12:30, drop you off anywhere between 1:30 and 2:30, that kind of a thing. So it may require a little bit of planning to work that out because of that uncertainty. You may be sitting in a doctor's office or sitting at home waiting for the ride a little bit, but they can get you door-to-door service. So anybody who has a disability, qualified in the same way that you would for reduced fare, seniors 65 and older, and general public can all use Dial-A-Ride. Again, it may be limited a little bit based on where your location is, based on timing, but the number here is listed 602-716-2100 for you to call and get some more info on those services. And as they say here at the bottom, virtually every corner of the Phoenix Metro is covered by these services. What you'll notice in Phoenix Metro, however, is that certain cities will apply this in different ways. Now, Ride Choice is another paratransit that people with disabilities or seniors 65 and older can use. So this is pretty similar to Dial-A-Ride, but you won't get shuttles as often. This is going to access Uber drivers, taxi cabs, shuttle vans and other things like that. And they have a little more flexibility in where they can go. Ride Choice will cost you $3 for an 8-mile trip, and then extended fees from there. But one of the big benefits of Ride Choice compared to Dial-A-Ride is that you don't have to share with anybody. So your timing should be a little bit better on that. But this is definitely something that one option or the other can get you place to place without having to get on a bus or a train. Reduced fees, of course, we're looking at about $3 to $5, I think, depending on how far your trip is. Can definitely be a beneficial, useful tool. And so the Ride Choice number is 602-716-2111. Now, if you have trouble getting onto public transit, you think you could do it, but you would just like somebody to walk you through the process, Valley Metro does offer travel training. So they have trainers who will get on the bus with you, teach you how to do it, everything from organizing your trip and learning where to get off to purchasing your fare and things like that. They'll ride with you until you feel like you can be independent, and that's just the free part of the service. It's just something for you to request, no additional fees for that. So how can you apply for eligibility? Same kind of thing as getting that reduced fare. Again, it's a door-to-door transportation, so here you're going to be calling Valley Metro, sending in that application to say that you do have an impairment, getting the doctor's signature on there, and they will again send you that eligibility letter to know that you qualify. Here it says that the paratransit services is good for 5 years, but can be a permanent eligibility for those whose disability isn't expected to change. And for legal blindness, we know that that has to be expected to last at least a year for it to really be legal blindness. So this is, if you just get punched in the eye and it gets better, it's not legal blindness, even if you were perhaps meeting the criteria for a month or so. This is something that we don't expect to change, like macular degeneration, glaucoma, conditions that are just going to get worse and worse over time. So again, we do have a few different options between cities. Phoenix Metro is a big place, and so Glendale, Peoria, Phoenix will have different options. So you may want to call and find out in your particular city if you needed a ride that took you from Phoenix into Surprise, for example. Could you get all the way on one dial-a-ride? You may not be able to, depending on the city's regulations, if they want you to switch rides at a shuttle center or something like that. So it'll take a little planning if you have long trips to take. If you're going over 8 miles, like we saw with Ride Choice, you may have to do a little bit of work on these to get what you need. However, if you've got shorter trips, you're just going to the grocery store, you're just going to a nearby doctor, and you're staying within the same city, you really shouldn't find any trouble. Scottsdale is one that's a little bit different as well. They have a cab connection service that they subsidize to. So this is going to be more similar to the Ride Choice system. So again, not every city is going to allow you to do it the same way. And if you're bouncing from one city to the next, you definitely want to call ahead, make sure we get everything approved. Doing everything a few days ahead is going to give you the best chance of getting exactly where you need to be without drivers getting lost, you getting stranded somewhere. But so Scottsdale does use a cab service to provide ADA paratransit. So outside of the Phoenix Metro, if we're not using paratransit services down here and you're up north, we have a couple different options here. So first, let's talk about the Mountain Line services. And so this is largely in Flagstaff through the Northern Arizona Intergovernmental Public Transportation Authority system. I think this does extend out to a few other places, but is largely just in Flagstaff. This is the public transportation service. This is only for people with disabilities who cannot get to the fixed bus systems already. The fixed bus system is already fully accessible. So the regular routes that everybody takes for public transit are designed to be used by people who have impairments or disabilities as well. So they do have some paratransit services up in Flagstaff, but they've really tried to set their basic system up to be as easy and functional as possible. That being said, if you have a hard time getting to their bus stations or to their lines, they do have a service will come and pick you up and take you there. So very similar to what we have in Phoenix Metro. Flagstaff's not quite as big. If you need to get in contact with them, phone number is 928-779-6624. And they're just regular business hours there. So that is our Mountain Line up in the Flagstaff area. You can visit them at mountainline.az.gov. Further north, with the Northern Arizona Council of Governments, we're talking about the counties of Apache, Coconino, Navajo, and Yavapai. Each one of these is using a different service. Some of them spread from one county to the others, some are in multiple areas. But these have all partnering groups that will help you get from one place to another. We know a lot of these counties, people are living quite spread apart. So trips to doctor's offices, we're definitely in rural areas here. If you want to get access to some paratransit services to help you get from one location to another, the toll-free line is 1-877-521-3500. And so if you want to visit their website, it's nacog.org, Northern Arizona Council of Governments. Moving down to Tucson, Tucson, of course, is a much bigger area. They have what I thought was kind of a more streamlined system. So very similar in their approach is what Phoenix Metro is doing. We have train lines, bus lines, shuttle lines, paratransit services, and these new, what they call streetcars, kind of like trolley cars. This is a new thing that's going on in both of these metros. But so we have these Sun Transit services in Tucson. and then they have Sun Van and Sun Shuttle, and so these are all part of the Sun Transit services. So if you go to suntran.com, that's where you can get into the access of all the different routes here through the Tucson metro area. Lots of course, smaller townships and cities and neighborhoods that this is going to apply to. But again, you're going to have to call the metro system if you're somebody who has a disability and wants to use these lines and wants to get access to reduced rates, get access to paratransit services and things like that. Just like you have to contact Valley Metro, you'll have to contact Tucson's ADA eligibility office. So their phone number is 520-791-5409. And again, expected fares are going to be in the neighborhood of $3 or so. This is, pretty typical for bus routes and train routes, things like that. I think anywhere you go is just a couple bucks. You really shouldn't have to spend more than that. So quite a bit cheaper than taking Uber and Lyft and these other services. But so Tucson does have lots of different lines that you can go to. If you may start on a bus line and have that take you to the train, have the train take you down to your final destination. You may have paratransit come and pick you up and chauffeur you where you need to go. But similar up to the Phoenix Metro, you may have extended pickup and drop-off times. You may have to share a ride with other people. Or if using, a more reserved service, you may get a private ride from one location to the other. So if you're down in the Tucson area, definitely go to suntran.com if you're looking for alternate transportation services. And they have noted that prices will also vary with your fare depending on how far you're going. Heading a little bit farther over to the border is Yuma with the YCAT service. So Yuma's a little bit farther out, harder to connect to any of the other lines, so they have their own bus route system that they work with. And so you can also have a transit trainer down in Yuma to walk you through how to use the system and ride with you until you feel comfortable and independent. They don't have paratransit from what I could see. So paratransit being somebody who can come door to door to pick you up and drop you off somewhere else. But they do have what they call deviations. So their buses, if you call ahead, can deviate out of their way to pick you up somewhere closer. So I think you'll have to talk to the actual transit services to see just how far away you can get them to deviate. And if they can come straight to your door, or if you have to kind of walk down to a more centralized location to get picked up. But this is definitely something that you can organize ahead of time. And if you're somebody who has a disability, you're going to have first priority in doing this. So anybody can call for a deviation, but somebody with a disability is going to get priority on doing that. And so they want you to call at least an hour ahead of any deviation. And if you've got a lot of open space on the bus, you can even ask for deviation at that moment. But if to really guarantee it, you've got up to 7 days ahead to make your trip. Just like Tucson and Phoenix, if you're applying for disability services here, you've got to fill out an application, have a licensed professional physician certify, why you do have an impairment or disability and why you deserve that ADA eligibility status. If you're a patient down in Yuma looking to get connected with them there, you want 783-2235. Email here is located on the screen. Outside of these kind of regular public transit services and paratransit services, there are also groups like Share the Ride, which is a kind of a carpooling service. This is a great organization